Special event alert.
Get out of the bathroom and run! This is Late For Changeover, your weekly space news and variety show. I'm Marty Smith, and I'm joined by Big Fern Mike Johns.
All right.
And our man in the closet, Jake Wall.
What's going on, guys?
We're here to bring you the latest headlines and updates pertinent to all Guardians and to the other lesser branches as well. So take your seats, get informed, and have a laugh as we present Late For Changeover.
Did you sign up for your OG Guardian pin or something like that? You get brought into the original Legacy Guardian
Oh, that's
club?
right. Yeah, that's right. We need to get there.
I haven't signed up yet.
Maybe I'll go look. Maybe I'll go do that just to present. I'll be like, I present to you your grandfather guardian. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
I wanted to talk, and I'm going to talk about it next week. But I wanted to continue on going to get my ID card last week. And the other thing that struck me is just walking around. I'm like, oh, that guy has a beard. Oh, that guy has a ball cap. Oh, that guy has a fucking Russian hat. This guy has no beard. Oh, this guy has, it's just, it was crazy amount. Well, I'll talk about it now. I just couldn't find the picture. Do you remember years ago when they sent that meme out about, I think it was a National Guard. It was like some National Guard group photo. Remember that? And
like
they
the
had
9 different uniforms.
Yeah. It was like 5 different uniforms, 4 different headgear, and one fat colonel standing on the side.
She had her hands in her pockets.
And she had her hand. That's right. She had her hands in her pockets. And I was like, oh, that's so true, right? But now, look at the active duty. How far that circle has come back, and now the active duty doesn't have one fucking uniform that they can all. Somebody has a fleece, somebody has Gore-Tex on, somebody has tennis shoes. Well, of course, that was
not only that, but like just even the blouses.
Yeah.
There's summer weight and winter weight, but summer weight don't have any pockets.
Oh, they don't.
No, because I was I gave this poor kid a hard time. I'm like, what's going on with that blouse? He goes, my uniform top? I was like, yeah. I go, is that a maternity blouse, man? You got no pockets. What's up with this? He's like, what do you mean? I go, maternity blouses, they don't have any pockets. Yours doesn't have any pockets. I go, I can understand the pants, but I don't understand the pockets. He's like, these are warm weather, man. And I was like, oh, okay.
Bullshit. He probably had on maternity weights.
He probably did. He's like, oh,
I mean, how could you enforce anything nowadays, right? If a guy wanted to wear like the maternity uniform, he's like, I'm feeling pretty pregnant today. It'd be like, no, you're not. Get back in uniform and be like, fucking EO, I'm complaining. You know, I mean, God, how many people are too shy?
A little bloaty.
Yeah. So I'll try to find that picture for next week, man, because that's such a classic dig on the Guard and Reserves, and now active duty is just
active duty.
It's out
of
control.
This is the standard old man argument of back in my day, we didn't have any beards or any uniforms. We all wore the same green olive drab uniforms with the Velcro on them. You know,
I'm with you, but it's funny because
I fully
active duty was
understand
making fun of the Guard and Reserve, and now they have become the Guard and Reserve.
Oh, absolutely.
That's what I. And you can't offend anybody who's currently in because they're like, yeah, it's comfortable. I like not shaving. It's nice. I like not shaving. I like not polishing. I like no brasso. I like no.
Y'all know what's up with the beard thing?
Hail Odin. You got to be a religious waiver. I honestly don't know what all of them are, but I know the religious waiver.
It's a religious waiver thing coming out?
The Viking religion, yes.
Well, there's the religious waiver. There's the health thing with the bumps, right? There's all that stuff.
But
and all of that's
always
taken,
had a problem.
But all of that's taken to the maximum extreme because nobody's going to shut it down. right?
Dude, I always had a problem with somebody with a shaving waiver and their stuff. Those guys that had bumps on their throat that you could see from like
Sure. Yeah.
20 yards away.
that
You're
looks
like,
painful.
geez.
Right. Right.
Those other guys that were like clean shaven, lined up.
Lined up.
You're like,
Yeah.
okay.
It's like, oh, you edged? Does that make the bumps go away if you
the
edge it
bumps.
up?
And then if anything, you should just have a neck beard because that's where all the bumps are
Yeah,
anyway.
exactly.
Right? Like,
exactly right. Well,
just
we had
throat
we had-
beard turtleneck.
remember when we had Rob Smith on there? He's like, that's all bullshit, right? He goes, I'm
Mhm.
black. I didn't get bumps. You just
Yeah.
fucking shave it. So, but it's as soon as you crack that door, it's going to be taken full advantage of, right? Just like a DNF on a Thursday afternoon. Anyway, so I thought this came out. I thought this was interesting too because last week, I play Call of Duty Mobile. It's nice. You can play little 5-minute matches and stuff like that. And I get, Mike, you said you saw this in Reddit, so I'd love to hear what you saw on Reddit. But I get the little alert, and a message. Some of the messages are, "Hey, we're doing maintenance," or, you won this, 10 credits or whatever, something. So I get this
You
alert.
got smoked by a 9-year-old.
I know, and I always mute it because it's always like, and I was like, how old is this Indonesian kid who's just fucking kicking my ass? So I get that, right? That's the message I get. Your fresh start is just a step away, and I'm like, oh, look at that. What's that all about?
Oh,
And
everybody can use a fresh start.
I open up the message, and this is the message. Ready for an even brighter future? It starts here. Looking for a new challenge, a rewarding career, and an even brighter future? The U.S. Air Force has everything you need to get started. Here you have the power to build the future you truly strive for, with hundreds of careers to choose from and educational opportunities. And you get an unmatched benefits package with low to no cost health care, tuition assistance, cash bonuses, and more. Ready to take the leap? Oh, I'll press go. And I get the special operator guy, right? Oh, that sounds exciting. And then if you watch a video, you get like some token to draw for some uniform or something like that. Here's the commercial that they run on it.
There are times when you run into the fire, and times when it's up to you to bring it.
Bring
I know.
Bring
We're
in
the
the
ones who
fire.
bring it.
Look what he's calling in, Jake.
Like always.
We bring the full power of the U.S. Air Force to the fight.
Tactical air control. So
That's cool.
yeah, I agree. At first I was like, are you kidding me? But you start thinking about it, and you're like, this guy's sitting here playing Call of Duty. Yeah, he's like, oh, shit.
Yeah.
But the only ones they advertise are TACPs and combat controllers.
Well,
Well, they know they can launch them out of the pipeline and then put them wherever they want.
Yeah.
Oh, sure.
Call of Duty doesn't include supply. It's not cool. Like warehouse management. Where's this creative stuff?
Yeah, once your vehicle gets blown up, they don't show the maintainer coming out there and like, patch this thing up. It's like, son of a bitch.
Gosh dang it.
Your mission for the next 16 hours is to replace this panel.
Yeah.
You're a security additional duty. Come on.
You gotta put the flashlight back in the toolbox correctly.
Yeah. What's the vehicle inspection form? Feel this out.
I had a guy in the Army, a private. He turned in their vehicle inspection form was a -10, right? Every vehicle had a -10, and he would turn it in. He would wait for like 20 minutes, and he would turn it in. No faults detected. I was like, how the fuck do you do that fast? And he's like, well, you take it, you get your hands a little dirty, you crumple it. You don't crumple it like this, but you fold it, like you've gripped it a lot. And then you sign off on it. It looks like you've gone through the checklist. And I'm like, son of a bitch.
Son of a bitch.
You said.
So, like I said, at first I thought, oh, these cornballs, man. But then I was like, that's whoever came up with that is creative as shit.
Well,
So,
think of the
Smart move.
return on investment. It was probably relatively inexpensive to run that ad. And then think about how many people have their phone in their hands and are playing that game. It's got to be one of the most popular games that's out there.
Yeah,
And
you see a real life depiction of what I'm doing, digitally here, and then maybe I could do that.
And if they wash out of combat control or pararescue, they're just going to go into a different career field.
Sure.
So
they can go combat camera like Ron Denman did.
yeah,
Ron, if you're listening, I just Well, he told us that. He said that.
Yeah.
But he didn't wash out. I know he got hurt. So.
Oh yeah.
There's
There's a lot of fun jobs in the Air Force though, like a lot of kind of cool jobs.
It was interesting though, going back to getting my CAT card or my ID card. The guy who's sitting there helping me, he's Air Force, right?
Yeah.
Because he's got the stupid gold letters, and I always think I was like, God, you dummies. Why does the Air Force have the gold letters? I can't read your name.
You can't read it.
Not a thing.
Marty's over here like,
yeah. I'm way up on him like this, and like,
yeah.
Like, what? You want to get away from my breast? And I'm like, yeah, sorry, I'm just trying to read your name, dude. And I said, what are the plans for all the support functions for Space Force? And he said, nope, Space Force is not getting them. They're like the Marine Corps.
Yep.
I was like, that was the best explanation I've ever gotten.
Nerd department of the Air Force.
Yeah, right. So all these guys are going to get sliced off doing Space Force jobs or supporting Space Force, but being Air Force. So,
yeah.
Anyway, let's get out of the news. I remember when I joined the Air Force and I went to, I think what it was called was IQT back then in 2000, 2001, whatever it was. I think it was IQT. Right.
Well,
then it changed to EUST, and then it changed to Space 100.
Well, it went through. It was
fundamentals, orbital mechanics.
It was ESOT when I got there in early 2000, which was enlisted space operator training.
All right, maybe it was ESOT. Maybe it was.
And then it went to ESPT, and those were were all IQTs, initial qualifying trainings.
Okay. All right.
But yeah, they changed it. It was ESOT.
I couldn't remember the original name, and then it went to EUST. Now I think it's Space 100, or I'm not sure, but ESOT. Very good. Thanks, Mike. And when I got there, I think I went late 2000 or early 2001. But that movie, remember that movie, Enemy of the State? With Will Smith and Gene Hackman, right? That was only like a couple years old. And this was before I knew anything about space. And you're watching that movie, and they're moving satellites to follow them around town, They're like, the satellites zooming over here so we can get a better look at them and get that wire diagram of that building. And you're like, wow, we really can do a lot of stuff. And then you start going through orbital mechanics, and you're like, we can't do any of this stuff. What are you talking about?
It doesn't work like that. You just used all the fuel ever assigned to that vehicle in one maneuver.
You just made it into a rock. Well done.
Yeah.
Well, that dovetails into this first story from Aerospace Forces magazine. So, are you guys ready to have your sons join the Space Force to be gas station attendants? That's what I want to set you up for, right?
Fuels.
When it comes to refueling satellites, Space Force faces hard choices.
Yeah.
Now that's a little misleading because they don't face any hard choices yet, right? They're just talking about the nozzle or the receptacle. So, as Pentagon and Space Forces leaders plan for future dynamic space ops where satellites can maneuver as needed and get refueled to prolong their service lives, industry leaders are preparing to deploy new technology and finalizing their concepts of operations for what they agree is an incredibly hard mission area. In-orbit refueling requires some kind of port or interface for satellites to receive fuel. The Pentagon has extensive requirements, of course, for such receptacles for aerial refueling, but standards for a satellite equivalent are still being hashed out. On January 29th, Northrop Grumman announced that Space Systems Command had selected its passive refueling module, or PRM, as a preferred refueling solution interface standard. Lauren Smith, Northrop's program manager for in-space refueling, told Air and Space Forces magazine that the plan is to have the PRM flying on satellites in orbit by 2025. They're going to have a nozzle on there, or a locking gas cap.
Yeah, basically. Yeah.
But
They had some demos and something like at the Space Symposium last year.
did they really?
Yeah, they
No
had that
kidding.
kind of stuff. And then I went to the UK Space Symposium and they were discussing that also.
I mean, I understand that's a really easy thing to add into the design. It's like, oh, here's the gas tank.
Yeah.
We don't know what's coming into it yet.
Well, and they're doing rendezvous options all the time with the ISS.
Sure.
You know, the Dragon
Sure.
goes up there, once a month and
Yeah.
docks in
Right.
to resupply and all that good stuff. It's the same thing. You just need gas, and then you put the gas in the spacecraft.
And I understand they got to come up, and this reminds me a little bit in a second, I'll tell you. But they got to come up with some kind of standard, right? Some kind of industry standard. And it reminds me of Tropic Thunder, right? When what's his name is explaining the difference between beta and VHS, and why porn went with VHS because it's easier, and he did that whole diatribe about both competing technologies and how VHS won because of porn.
Yeah.
This is what this story reminds me of. Maybe that's a little far-fetched, but I think you understand where I'm
It's a
coming
bit
from.
of a reach, but we'll give it to
Not
you.
really, it is. I mean, you got to decide on the right
but
delivery system.
but it's something that needs to be done, right?
Sure,
Because
right.
fuel is what limits a lot of our longevity up there.
I would argue it's
Or-
more technology. Like we're not replacing
Well-
spacecraft because of running out of fuel. We're replacing spacecraft because the technology has advanced so far forward that the technology we were using 5 years ago is now obsolete. And even if you were to go up and refuel a DSP satellite, let's take the movement out of it and all that kind of stuff. You have much better sensors that you could strap onto a new one and launch and get more capability out of it now, as opposed to just refueling it.
Well, sure.
Yeah, but using DSP as an example, we all know that the majority of the jumps in technology came from actual software updates, right?
And that's
They
one way
had
to do it.
Yeah.
sensors that
Yeah.
were way advanced, but we couldn't process that amount of data. We can't all the information's just pumping down. We don't have the speed to process that.
You know,
So
and
software technology was jumping.
it would be interesting to see. I would imagine that MEO or LEO satellites would need more fuel to stay up longer to course correct, right? Because they're always having to fix those orbits. GEOs don't fix orbits that much, right? But
Yeah,
some of those
twice a
other
year.
ones, like GPS, do. They're constantly orbit correcting. And then not to mention NRO or any of those satellites that are pulling up wire diagrams on buildings and stuff. They got to zoom
Yeah.
around here and there.
According to Will Smith.
According to Will Smith. An SSC official later told Space News that that SSC selection did not mean that the Space Force would use just the PRM interface exclusively. And an executive with a company called Orbit Fab, a startup that has developed its own port called the Rapidly Attachable Fluid Transfer Interface, or RAFTI, told Air and Space Forces magazine that its interface will go on Space Force satellites too. So even though SSC said, hey, this is a standard, I guess we're going to use other ones too.
Well, commercial applications and stuff like that.
So this is the RAFTI, all right, from the company Orbit Fab. There's an interesting picture,
Yeah.
but I don't know if one side, I don't know how it works. But it does say RAFTI right here. So for what that's worth.
So
Yeah.
I'm on their Orbit Fab website,
Yeah.
and it literally, I'm looking at it and I scroll down a little bit and it's like backed by Northrop Grumman, Lockheed Martin. I was like, oh,
Well,
they're
wait a
the
minute.
same company. Yeah.
Northrop
Space
just
Fund,
came up with
Bolt.
their own. So, this who is this guy? Smith. They said Northrop will retain the intellectual property rights to the PRM, but the government, which helped fund the technology's development, will have usage rights and can distribute the technical specifications to other contractors who will not have to pay a licensing fee. Harris said Rafty by Orbit Fab, quote, is available for 30 grand to anyone that wants refueling. It's just like, we'll sell to any of you guys. Give us 30 grand, we'll sell it to you. Between Rafty and PRM, more refuelable satellites will likely launch in the coming years. It is interesting. It would be interesting to go over, maybe I'm too locked into DSP and, the beds and shooting hydrazine and all that stuff.
Pumping the plenum.
The plenum tanks, right?
Pumping the plenum.
But it would be interesting to see what fuel are they talking about? Main thrusters? Are they talking about positional?
I'm sure it's something decomposed hydrazine.
I don't know.
It's going to be some low-level station keeping maneuver fuel. It's not going to be solid rocket boosters or anything.
But it is interesting because usually all these satellites have enough fuel for their planned life.
Service life, yeah.
Right? And at the end of that service life, usually the technology, like we talked about earlier, that they went up with is already superseded. But I guess keeping a satellite limping around while refueling it saves millions in launching a replacement, I suppose. But
depending on its application, for like ComSats, it would make sense because if you're up there doing internet service at Geo, you could be doing that for 20 years and not really have to upgrade the technology.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So, I'm sure there are very useful applications for it. I'm not shitting on it in any way, but I would say in my experience, most satellites get replaced because of their sensor systems being obsolete, as opposed to loss of fuel.
But then I thought
they're talking about, like on their website, they're talking about having multiple fuel depots up there.
Oh yeah, I'm getting to that.
Hold on. Oh, okay.
I'm getting to that.
The cislunar ones too.
Now that makes sense.
Straight lunar or
no? Cis, like literally putting a fuel depot around orbiting the moon.
Oh, I thought you're not heterosexual. You meant
not heterosexual. Okay. I don't know what that cis means. But no, the cislunar ones is orbiting the moon, a fuel depot orbiting the moon, and then the other one coming back down and refueling stuff.
The actually doing the refueling is another story, and Northrop and Orbit Fab are already taking different approaches. Orbit Fab's plan is to have operational fuel depots, or what it calls gas stations in space. So in the next few years, but the depots themselves won't refuel satellites. Instead, they will stay in place, and shuttles, quote unquote, will maneuver between the two so that the client, such as the Space Force, doesn't have to burn fuel getting to the depot. It's not only burning fuel. I mean, you take a satellite out of its, let's just talk geo for a second. You take a geosat out of its orbit to get it back into its position. That's months or weeks or whatever it is.
Yeah, it can take a long time. Right?
Yeah. So, you don't want that thing coming out of its position. At least I wouldn't want to if I was a commander.
Well, and from an ops cap perspective, you probably don't want to take it out of mission.
Right, absolutely.
Or willing to come to you and give you gas. I mean, fuck it.
Very good. So there's Orbit Fab's artist rendering of its gas station in space. Right?
I like it.
And here are 3 E3s in here going, fuck.
The orbital
6
mechanics.
months of this. Bunch of cowboys coming up for gas.
But I'm interested to see. So I like the idea because I think it could really advance some technologies out in space. Just having this on orbit capability there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Would, open up so many different avenues to innovation and stuff. It's very interesting.
Yeah, it's just more traffic, right?
Man, can you imagine the complexity of the rendezvous ops though that they're talking about with the shuttle, with that little fuel shuttle?
I don't
satellite?
know, man. It seems like
Man,
we didn't recover our stages of our rocket because it was too difficult. So we just, the early parts of the space program, we just let them burn in or we let them crash into the ocean. Elon said, "Hey, I can pinpoint land this thing on a freighter in the middle of the ocean." So if he's doing that with atmosphere, it would almost seem easy to come up there and do a docking maneuver. Docking maneuvers over. I mean, that was the biggest thing.
Well, and there again, they do that every month. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
With the
ISS. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, meanwhile, in the same release announcing the PRM selection, Northrop revealed that it had received a contract from Space Systems Command to develop. Now, here you go. The Geosynchronous Auxiliary Support Tanker, or the GAS-T, a spacecraft that will have enough fuel to maneuver between satellites and refuel them. So this whole thing is going to go satellite to satellite to satellite. So this, I know it's a terrible picture of it, but this is the artist rendering of Northrop Grumman's GAS-T. And I think this is the satellite, and I think it's connecting up to it or something like that.
I would imagine they had a much better name for that, but then the lieutenant that came up with it got yelled at because he needed something that the general could remember very easily.
Right. Or the lieutenant came up with it and they're like, "That's the dumbest idea." And some general goes, "Hey, GAS-T, I like it." And they're like, "Oh, that fucking lieutenant guy. That's going to stick now. That's going to stick." So, exciting things for those who have a fuels AFSC, if you will. Right?
Shout out to Sean Fishburne, former fuelie right there.
Yeah, look what your grandchildren are going to get to do. They're going to get to go up there. There was a terrible show I remember watching as a kid. I think it was late 70s, maybe early 80s, and it was called Far Out Space Nuts. You can look it up. It had I think Gilligan was in it, Bob Denver was in it, and it had like a skipper character, and these two guys were trash trucks in space, and they had a spacecraft that the front of it would open up like a trash truck, and then it would just, I guess they were just throwing trash out into space, and these guys' job was to go around and collect it. That's what this story's all about, right?
That's going to be the next big thing we need to solve is the trash up there.
God!
But nobody wants.
Nobody's going to police
random satellites coming close to their satellites.
Right. But who's going to go up there and collect it up? And be like, "I will for $1 trillion."
Yeah,
waste
management. Technologies like this, if you have these gas, pumpers, whatever you want to call them, going up there and rendezvousing with other satellites, they could probably go up, rendezvous, attach, and then pull them back down. I would imagine these things are relatively expendable, and once you start making it, financially feasible, you can start doing that. And this is that technology jump, that innovation that'll, an idea like this will start. So,
if it gives it, I mean, it would even just have to give it a push. If they just pushed some of that stuff down,
it'd burn. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I mean, if it's taking fuel over to that location, it's refuelable itself. And then just one big boost and then the opposite boost and let it fly.
If you are a believer in extraterrestrial and UFOs and all that stuff, you think they're flying us like, look at this garbage, all this shit all over their planet?
No, they probably have garbage all over their planet too.
That's why they're here. Like, hey,
I really hope these humans figure this shit out so we can take it back and take it back to the Voltron or the fuck.
Let's move on to more hype news for the Space Force. Space Force, right? This is from Business Insider. Thank you, Jake. Space Force is sending one of its Guardians into space for the first time in its history. Its 4-year history. The U.S. Space Force is sending its first member into space. Colonel Nick Hague is set to pilot a NASA mission to the International Space Station as early as August. And there's our man.
There he is, Nick.
Right.
Right.
2 NASA astronauts and a Russian cosmonaut will join the Crew 9 mission aboard the Dragon, a SpaceX spacecraft. Upon arrival at the ISS, Haig will pivot to serve as a flight engineer. The crew will conduct a wide-ranging set of operations and research activities for the duration of their more than 6-month mission. Seeds. We're doing seeds. That's all we're doing. Remember?
Nice.
Seeds experiments. This will be Haig's first launch as a Space Force Guardian, but his third launch in total. He transferred from the Air Force to the Space Force in 2021, according to his NASA profile. So he's already been to space twice before.
Yeah.
Good on him. That's badass. But Space Force is like, hey, we're finally sending one of our guys to space. The first Space Force guy.
Now, I wonder if the other services are going to start having to do that. If the Space Force is going to wrestle that away and say, no, if you're going to have an astronaut go, he needs to transfer over for at least X
That's
period
a good
of
point.
time.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, all the services have astronauts now. And
do they?
Yeah.
But once they go into the astronaut program, like NASA's astronaut program.
Yeah, but you're still considered a military member.
Well,
I mean, we've all seen not Independence Day. What's the other one? With Bruce Willis and
Armageddon.
Armageddon.
Yeah, Armageddon. There you go. You need someone on there with the weapons, and the military guys are the only ones qualified.
Well, that's a good point. I mean, it hasn't been since like the Apollo program that you're like, they took all these pilots and made them astronauts. Now you don't have to be a pilot to be an astronaut. So, I don't know. I don't know about you, but it seems like the Space Force is trying awfully hard to market itself. Like they have the leaders have this need to go get us out there, tell the public about us. I mean, shit. It was. This colonel's already been to space 3 times, but Space Force was like, "Hey, our first Space Force Guardian." It's like, this old. I'm getting bored of it, Hell, in October last year, remember they had the article out about the first Space Force to complete Ranger School.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, oh, okay. Why is he doing that? But all right, good on him. It just seems like they're trying so hard, like little brother. They're just, we gotta tell them how good Space Force is. And then, I don't know why I didn't cover this, but Space Force in January, they announced their 2023 Polaris Award service level recipients. So the Polaris Award, remember writing annual awards? Remember how pain in the ass that was, right? Quarterly awards was bad enough. But if you had a guy who's, all right, we're putting them up for annual, go add 2 pages to this thing. He's like, oh my God. All right, what did you do? I got Habitat for Homeless. What else did you do, right? Well, the Polaris Awards... the Polaris Award is an annual awards program that is built from the 4 Guardian values of character, connection, commitment, and courage. There are 4 individual award categories representing each value and a team excellence category that signifies all 4 values. So they have the character award, the connection award, the commitment award, the courage award, and the team excellence award. All different awards, right? So now, Jake, I need you to write a commitment award.
There we go.
On Sergeant John's. All right, I need that probably by tomorrow. COD.
The only commitment award I always think of when I heard commitment is that Team America World Police when he's like, get in the limo, prove your commitment. He's like, suck my. You're like, whoa. That's the only commitment award that person's getting.
Well, and he may have gotten the courage award from that too. So,
well, that's a given, yeah.
But now you got to rate all these awards, and I'm not going to go over the award winners because good on them for winning the award. Is not their holy shit! It's just like Space Force. It's like just calm down, just do your shit. right? You don't need to tout. But that's how Air Force Space Command was too. It's like we got to prove ourselves to the rest of the Air Force, the pilots and the cops and the maintainers and all those guys. We got to show that space is bad, and that carried over into Space Force.
Yep.
Now they're like, we got to show the first Guardian who has ever rode a horse. I don't know.
I'm sure it's a tale as old as time, right? And
I suppose, but I just don't see the Army or the Navy. Definitely not the Marines.
They're doing their bullshit too. They're doing their bullshit too. They've got all this same nonsense. I can remember when an awards package came down, and it was some excellence in space thing. But I mean, the people that won it were like astronauts. And the DO came to me and was like, "Hey, I want to put in this airman for this award." So I was like, oh, Jesus. So I go in, I grab her annual package, and I, gather some things, start putting things together. But then I looked into the actual award and some of the recipients. These people have been to the moon. It was like, dude, like I seriously can't submit this award in good faith. Like, no matter how good this airman was and how great of an individual,
she did 16 hours with Habitat for Humanity.
Yeah, it's not gonna.
You're competing against Johnny Kim, the Navy SEAL astronaut pilot doctor.
Did you submit the award or not?
No. I told him if you wanted to do it, here's all the stuff. You knock yourself out. I've got some integrity here, and I'm not going to do it.
I tried that one time, and I almost got sent home from a foreign country. Because I told my commander, I was like, well, I'm not going to put anybody in for quarterly awards. We just got here. They're just doing their job.
I was on vacation with you that time.
I'm going to send you back, Sergeant Smith. And I say, you son of a bitch. So
meanwhile, I'm like throwing.
And part of that is just so mid-level commanders can say, "Hey, I've submitted my guys," right? And it's just
and that's that was the thing. Like, I knew I was right, and if they came down on me, that I would be like, "Look, this is not in the true spirit of this award." And there again, if you guys want to submit somebody for for squadron, if you want to do it for the squadron's overall benefit, knock yourself out. But I'm not going to waste my time or her time or anybody else's time doing this shit.
Well, maybe that's why they chose what's his name over you, Mike.
Yeah, there you go.
You weren't playing ball. That's why I got shit on too. So I don't know. We got
shit on because we're already cranky. That's what
I think space speaks for itself, even though the rest of the services make fun of it, even though Eric, if he was here, would make fun of it. But the things that space does is pretty cool, pretty badass, pretty interesting stuff, and it's all behind the scenes. I mean, it's support to support. There's and it's not going to be until space gets offensive capability that people will be like, holy shit, Space Force badass. They could send the space laser down and kill 100,000 people at a time. You're like, yes, that's right, goddammit. Until that point, we don't have to keep proving ourselves as a force. And this is what this sounds like.
We've had that discussion, though. It's the mentality of we have to be a warfighter.
Yeah.
And it's nobody can be support anymore.
Right.
You're like, dude, for every trigger pulling individual, there's 24 people like intel and freaking support and medical and all. I mean, there's
you give them those
essential to that one person pulling that trigger.
And they issue those damn VR goggles out to all those guys that rely on that satellite connection. And they'll be like, Space Force, you suck. And they're like, hey, what's wrong with my GPS? This thing doesn't work. So, yeah, they'll appreciate it when that happens.
Well, how many times did you guys see KIA on a Space Guys awards package or EPR or some shit?
Or sortie. Sorties were bad too, right? He flew so many sorties.
I loved writing in sorties, though. I wrote sorties all the time.
KIA
Yeah, it was dumb. Anyway, good on Colonel Haig. No offense to Colonel Haig, but it's just Space Force should just take a step back. Just be the silent, confident guys. That's what I would like to see Space Force be. Instead of like, like the little brother. Hey, look what we got. Look what we got. And they even have they've put out that call so that you could go to SEAL or like Ranger or any of those courses. Why would a Space Force person need to do that? Other than just so Space Force could say, hey, we've got a Space Force SEAL.
Credibility in that
Like,
community, I guess.
he's never gonna.
That's it.
He
You know.
wasted all that military training time and money, and he's never gonna do it. You know, so I don't know. I don't know. Anyway, let's go on to another benefit provided by your U.S. military. All right. From taskandpurpose.com. Asbestos, cancer-linked toxins reported in Air Force nuclear bases. How long? For days? For weeks? For months? No, for years. Let's see. So this one, oh, jeez. Can you see that? I hope not, because I just screwed my whole screen up.
Nice.
The Air Force is currently investigating its nuclear launch silos. It's investigating its nuclear launch silos for potential cancerous risks, but the service has been aware of toxic dangers at the facilities for years. As most stories that we do on this show, right? So I think that's Minot. You know, that's the capsule. Have either of you guys ever been in that?
No.
I've never even seen them either. I've just seen pictures of them. I've never.
No, it says it's Maelstrom.
Oh, it's Malmstrom. Sorry.
Yeah.
Right? Was it Minot, Malmstrom, and
Effie?
I can't remember the other one. Effie. Yeah.
Yeah, Effie Warren.
According to a new report by the Associated Press, the AP obtained several Air Force documents dating back decades through a FOIA request. The documents show that not only did the Air Force know of the dangers many chemicals in the nuclear missile bases posed, there had been repeated leaks or spills that impacted personnel in the launch control centers at that facilities, which is what you're looking at, the entrance to one of those facilities now. Let me remove that. Go back to that. That's wrong. There we go. The ground-based ICBMs are located at 3 facilities in the Midwest: Effie Warren, Malmstrom in Montana, Minot in North Dakota. Documents obtained by the AP found internal reports of asbestos urgently marked priority from 1992, as well as reports of asbestos leaks in missile silos in 1989. One incident in 1987 saw a leak of polychlorinated biphenyl, or PCBs, in the form of a sticky, oozing substance causing headaches and nausea among those impacted.
So
There's a joke
so
in
the
there.
PCBs, right? Yeah, exactly. The sticky oozy. The PCBs, we didn't know that those were going to kill everybody. Right.
No, we didn't even. Yeah, they're just
until what?
We didn't know they were
2000s?
forever chemicals, right?
But we've known
with
asbestos. Yeah,
Mhm.
that's the thing. We've known
asbestos
is killing people since since early 90s. And they're still like, it's a priority. Let's file it appropriately.
Hey, the asbestos that's covering this lead door is scraping off. Maybe we should report that. It's like, Jesus Christ.
I mean, you'd have people doing a 20-year career. You could as a missile maintainer.
And it sucks that those in command didn't know, right? I mean, we didn't, like you said, we didn't really know the effect of PCBs until 20, 30 years later. And then they're like, hey, I'm getting cancer. I'm like, whoa, this PCB thing must be a problem. But they didn't know back then. No, that's, maybe they should have known. I don't know. I don't know how you know if you don't know. But now it's coming home to roost. So launch control centers, or LCCs, located dozens of feet underground, are crewed around the clock, with crews spending hours inside a confined space with the risk of exposure to toxic chemicals. I think they spend 24 hours down there, don't they? Isn't that one of their shifts?
Yeah. They've changed up their alerts time and time. There were 72-hour alerts for a period of time.
Yeah.
But yeah, so their alert schedules change. I don't know what it is now.
So, but they're down there for a day or maybe more.
Yeah.
In the last year, several former personnel came forward saying they had developed cancer. In response, the Air Force launched a series of measures to test the current LCCs, launch control centers, and to see how many people were impacted by the hazardous material. Earlier this summer, Air Force Global Strike Command, which is a badass name. That's a great name, right? Air Force Global Strike, which oversees the nation's intercontinental ballistic missiles, said that it had detected 2 cases of elevated levels of PCBs in the LCCs at Minot and Malmstrom. A cleanup of all 3 nuclear facilities was ordered. A December update by Air Force Global Strike Command found that 4 instances of elevated levels of PCBs have been detected in the LCCs at Malmstrom and F.E. Warren. Additionally, the service is trying to accurately count exactly how many current or former missile personnel developed cancer. That expanded survey was announced earlier this month, going beyond people who worked directly in the LCCs to the wider group that worked on ground-based nuclear missiles. So, cops, maintainers, all those guys. I wonder how many of these guys are reporting to the VA and they're like, "Hey, I got cancer from something," and they're like, "Well, prove it," right?
Yeah.
And so they do a report like this, and God knows when it's going to be done. But when they come out and they're like, "This direct contact with this stuff has caused cancer," that's just going to flood, right? And rightfully so. Those guys should do it. But then you're going to fight with the insurance agents called the VA to try to get claims. So
you're going to have a class action lawsuit and wonderful commercials, or
right.
Were you a member of the missile community in 1994 to 2008?
I should have categorized all these because that's it. That brings me right back to the Camp Lejeune water thing. The was it Red Hill, the fuel leak, right? The fuel was it Red Hill or something like that? I ran across another
Hickam,
one.
The base housing.
Yeah, the Hickam. Yeah,
right, Hickam.
Then I ran across another one where I think the Marines were filing a claim because of like cockroach infested barracks. It's just like, damn.
Well, and there was an article out here the other day on the PCBs. Any Air Force base or any military base with a flight line was using those for years for fire control. And
the foam. We did that one. We did that story with the foam. The guys over in Turkey with the black oozing stuff. That's they couldn't figure out what that was, and they're like, "Yeah, I got cancer."
3M just had that ear protection.
Yeah, with the lawsuit against 3M. Yeah. So
they were lying about the protective level of that,
But don't worry, all you prospective prospects. The military will take care of you. Don't worry, right? Speaking of prospective prospects, our final story from the Associated Press. This is just in time for the upcoming draft. So the headline is "No diploma, no problem. Navy again lowers requirements as it struggles to meet recruitment goals. The U.S. Navy is starting to enlist individuals who didn't graduate from high school or get a GED, marking the second time in about a year that the service has opened the door to lower performing recruits as it struggles to meet enlistment goals. The decision follows a move in December 2022 to bring in a larger number of recruits who score very low on the Armed Services Qualification Test. Both are fairly rare steps that the other military services largely avoid or limit, even though they are all finding it increasingly difficult to attract a dwindling number of young people who can meet the military's physical, mental, and moral standards. Under the new plan, Navy recruits without an education credential will be able to join as long as they score 50 or above on the qualification test, which is out of 99. The last time the service took individuals without education credentials was in 2000. The other services have largely balked at such changes. So, I don't know.
I think the very next step, though, is they have to open up the old school Shanghai tunnels under bars. Portland had it. Freaking North Carolina had it. Remember, way back in the day, people would get drunk in bars close to ports, and they would just get kidnapped and wake up fucking 3 days
on
out
the
to
ship.
sea. Yeah, they're like, "Welcome to the streets." I mean, welcome aboard.
Well,
That's the next step, man.
I mean, if you go back to Vietnam era, maybe it was even before, but that was when judges could go, "Hey, you either go to jail or you go enlist."
Yeah.
You know, go to war or go to jail. We've all sung that cadence. I don't know. I don't know. It just seems like, I mean, because there are, on one hand, it's a desperation move. On the other hand, I've known a lot of guys who didn't graduate who were very smart dudes, right?
Oh yeah.
You know, and not graduating doesn't necessarily mean, hey, I was too dumb and I flunked out. You know, it could be, hey, there was a gang who bullied me, or there was, my teacher came on to me, so I dropped out. You know, and there's a number of reasons why they didn't finish high school or GED. And it doesn't always mean that they're dumb. Now, there are dumb ones, right? There are dumb guys, right?
Most of the time, it means they're dumb. And that's where this is going to bite them in the ass. Sure, you're going to be able to find a few shiny rocks in the in the pebbles,
but I don't know. Can you see a connection of the dots of we did that story where foreigners, whatever you want to call them, who can come in and they can serve and get citizenship, right? Yeah. This seems like hand in glove with that kind of policy. Like, oh, you don't have a GED? You have a green card. Come in and you do 4 years and you can be a citizen after that. I think that was a big for Puerto Ricans, mainly. Puerto Ricans, Guamanians, Samoans. I think I knew guys who were all from there signed up in the Army. And I don't know if citizenship was guaranteed them after that, but maybe it is. So maybe this is all part of that. But I don't know. It just seems, I guess I got to do something. Or draft.
I think, what's the other one? South Korean was a shocker to me. They can join the Air Force.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Do they get nationalized after they join the Air Force? Do they get
I don't remember. I remember multiple times over there going, oh yeah, hey, where are you from? They're like, here. I'm from here. I'm like, oh
really?
Yeah.
Huh.
I'm gonna look it up, but yeah, multiple times.
They could have been a dual citizen. There's a whole bunch of possibilities to that. I mean, vets are over in South Korea hooking up with South Korean women, and boom, they have a kid, and the kid then has dual nationality. And the dad could have retired, stayed there. Any number of things could have happened.
That was damn, who was a comedian who said that? I can't remember who that comedian was, but he stood up. He's like, "Hey, I'm half Korean, I'm half American because my dad was in the Army."
I mean, it's a real thing.
That's a good line. Between Koreans and Germans, right? That's how it was all during the Cold War. But I don't know. I guess you got to reach out to something. But I think they're missing the underlying argument with all this stuff about why people aren't joining. It's not that you're tapping the right population.
That's exactly it.
I think there's many more factors that go into that, not the least of which is that, they do all those surveys with Gen Z and all that stuff. And they're like, hey, what would you think if there was a draft? And I'm like, fuck that, right? They don't want to serve it. But there's no history of service necessarily, and there's no pull to service, especially when we've gone through the whole minimum wage argument that we've gone through over the last decade, or maybe not that long, but that whole argument about living wage and stuff. And now you want to step in and take, an E1's pay? Shit, no.
Yeah. Well, at least you get 3 hots and a cot. I mean
that appeals to a certain group, maybe the ones who dropped out of high school. But to the general populace of the young people, I don't think that. I mean, They don't want to work at any fast food because it's beneath them. I mean, what is the military going to be to that? So,
yeah, well, I mean, there's more to it, but yeah, you're definitely right in that. Like, just everything that's been going on has been fucking with this military recruiting thing, and I don't think that hiring in people without high school diplomas or GEDs is going to solve their issue. They need to solve the overarching issue of why people aren't joining to begin with, and they're not joining because they don't want to. They don't want to go to war for some bullshit they don't believe in.
I agree.
And going back all the way to Vietnam, it's the war thing has been hard to sell, and we continue to go to wars over stupid shit. And you got Congress coming out right now. I mean, what was his name? Schumer saying that, hey, if we don't give Ukraine money today, then your kids will be fighting in Ukraine, 2 years from now. No one's going to like that. It's like, dude, like you guys are missing the whole point of this whole shit.
That's a really intuitive point that you brought up about Vietnam, because we can all read the history books and we can all study about what the populace was, why we were in Vietnam in the first place, why it was just kind of a worthless, the populace saw it as, why are we there? And then the institution of the draft to get people over there. And you fast forward through 20 years of being in Afghanistan and Iraq, pulling out of Iraq, giving them all our equipment. And why the hell did we have 3 soldiers die a couple weeks ago? What are they doing there? What are we doing anywhere? And so, if there's one thing that all the independent news stuff has come out and the internet has enabled, is to ask these questions like, why are we over there at all? Why do we have these posts everywhere? There's no point in them anymore.
Well, and is there any tangible gain for that country? Right? Is that country going to be better off after the war, or better after our influence?
And I think
probably not.
I think growing up, I was always gung ho, not knowing all this other information that was out there, right? But I think it's good that it's out there, and the young people are like, I don't want to join an organization that's just going to send me off to something that doesn't make any sense, to have a Senate majority leader threaten that I'll have to go fight in Ukraine for what? Not for America.
Yeah.
None of this stuff is for us.
Yeah.
It's all for political influence. So I think they're seeing that.
I mean, just to be low pay, food stamps,
live
in toxic environments, right? We just got done talking about that.
Right.
We also discussed prior to this, the retirement program. It's a 401k, but it's based off of 4% of your base pay. Right. So 4% of $1,000 a month, or $2,000 a month. It's not
the two biggest incentives are VA loan and education. That's it. Really, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if you can't, and that could strike a chord with a lot of the younger generation, because the younger generation, like my daughter, is like, I don't know how the hell we're going to buy a house. When minimum house prices for decent places to live are approaching $300,000. You could get something somewhere else, not in Colorado, unless you go way out east Colorado.
Yeah.
Or way out west Colorado. But you're not going to get, $150,000 starter house. You got to go to Nebraska or Kansas or something like that. But then you go there, you're not going to earn the salary. So that may appeal to that younger generation, like, oh, I can buy something with nothing down for 4 years of my time. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
And I don't have to graduate high school. All right. Now
if they could lock in a VA loan interest rate at 1%,
right,
that would solve a lot of the bullshit going on right now. And then I bet people would sign up to get that benefit.
We were always lucky because we worked in an environment that had a TS clearance. Once you obtain that TS clearance, that was money in the bank, right? With contractors, that's money in the bank. Is all they need you to have is that TS clearance. That was worth as much as a VA loan. But you go in and to one of these jobs, to swabby.
No, man.
That's
We
tough.
we
Man.
brought
That's a
that
tough
up
role.
the other day in that, they're being a contractor, you never know when the funding's going to run out or whatever. It's the pros and cons of working for the government as a contractor. But we've got that benefit as space nerds in that, okay, cool. Unfortunately in Colorado Springs, they're always looking for us.
Everybody's looking for you, right?
So as soon as the contract's up and they're like, oh, what are we going to do?
So don't worry.
Fine.
Wait to flip your badge for the next one. And,
that's exactly it.
I went to I applied to did I tell this story before? I applied to a Raytheon job. And they're like, hey, okay, we're going to interview you. And I did a phone interview. And I was like, I don't necessarily know how to write requirements. I can contribute to writing it, but I've never written requirements on my own.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, we're not even necessarily considering you for that job. There's 3 others jobs that we're considering you for. And I was like, what? And they're hiring the clearance.
Yeah.
They'll teach you whatever they want you to know, but they're hiring the clearance. So that was the benefit that we had. But yeah, some of these other things, it's like, well, it still is going to appeal. It's like the boxing game, right? It still is going to appeal to those who are really down and out. You can build yourself up through the military.
Well, and to a certain degree, but with this specific article referring to the Navy, I don't think they're going to get their return on investment. Just to be able to tick a number up, the training delta between someone who can't write a simple, 3-page paper to graduate from high school, or any other variety of things. Like, you finish high school, it's kind of like getting a degree. You show that you can finish a program, and you pick up these various skills that matter in the bigger scheme of things. Being able to do math, put together a sentence that makes sense, all that kind of stuff. And when you're doing this, I mean, as soon as these floodgates open and people do start coming in the door, they're just not going to get the return on their investment. And then the people that they're hiring, they're going to hire for 2 to 4 year enlistments. A lot of them are just going to cause problems.
Well, sure. Well, and that's also part of the military's problem right now, is not necessarily hiring, or not only hiring people, but retention. The retention sucks.
The retention's an issue.
Right? Because people know, hey, I can come in, I can punch in for 4 years, I get out, I get all my benefits, and I'm good. That's exactly the reason why they have those benefits. But to try to get them to go further, that's a tough one. So I don't know. It's funny because I took the tack as I knew a lot of good guys who never graduated and they were competent, and Mike took the tack as anybody who doesn't graduate is a moron. They can't even put a sentence together.
Well, I didn't say anybody. There are going to be a few shiny pebbles.
Yeah.
Because security forces will take them all. So, and they'll train them up.
How many years does the Navy need them for? Are they 4 and done?
Right.
Just fine. Are they 2 and done? They freaking make it to 1 or 2 deployments, and that's all it's worth to us. Fine.
Well, and you also have the risk of you sign a guy up who, for whatever reason, he didn't graduate, he didn't get a GED. Is that guy going to I mean, if he couldn't comply with the requirements to get a high school diploma or a GED, is he going to be a good fit in a military environment?
Well, you get into this. I mean, some people are just dealt a shitty hand in life, right? Like, they just it sucks. And there's going to be some people that go into the military and do this, and they're going to be your shiny rocks. They're going to come out and they're going to be like, oh man, my life actually has a vector now, and I've got something to grasp onto, and I don't want to fuck this up because it's going to take me somewhere. Yeah. And you're going to have those guys that grab onto that bull and run with it.
Get them out of that environment.
People are going to be few and far between, and when I look at it in reality.
Yeah. I don't know. It reminds me of a story. I had a soldier. We were in an assembly area, and we didn't have any chemical test kits, right? And this guy, he was a specialist. He was an E4. He's a great guy. He was an earnest, hardworking guy. But he wasn't the smartest guy in the world, right? And I was like, Maloney, I need you to run over there to Bravo Battery and see if they have any test kits. Ask Captain, I don't know, it's Captain Jones, I think his name was. Ask Captain Jones if he has any test kits so we can run. So he ran off. He ran, right? Because we didn't have comms set up. So he ran. He came back like half an hour later. I was like, Maloney, they have any of those test kits? And he goes, oh, I forgot to ask him. And he took off and he ran. I was like, dude. He ran over there and ran back. And then
why'd you run over there in the first place?
So you might be getting that guy, which is, I love the guy. I mean, he was so, like I said, earnest and hardworking, but he just wasn't that bright, man. But he was, you couldn't help it. You couldn't help it. He would run forever if you told him to run forever. Just don't tell him to do a task at the end of that. So
yeah.
Maybe that's what you're getting in the Navy. I don't know.
There you go.
Anyway, on that note, I think we're at end up, guys. You guys have any? I was going to try to do a recap. I was thinking of doing a recap. What did we learn today?
Oh.
But I'm not sure if we're there. I don't know if we'd learn anything today, really.
We didn't have a chance to do any. I want those mid-shift conversation stuff.
Well, we had one.
Not this week.
That turned into like Mike said, that last week was definitely a mid-shift conversation.
That was a good one.
Well, we got to have someone that's gonna get pissed. Because that's part of the fun of the mid-shift
conversation. You got to dig your heels in on something. Yeah,
whatever you want, I'll take the other side. I'm good. I'll do that.
Yeah, that's true. You are a very good contrarian. That's true. Mike is a correctarian. You're a contrarian. I just want you all to get along. So
don't play it off.
But it is interesting because Eric believes what he hears on the news. Mike takes the position of the higher ups because he was a weapons guy and stuff. He likes to support that. Jake is a revolutionary. He doesn't believe anything he's ever told. And I don't know. I got to be more of a puppet master, maybe. I don't know.
I just want you to prove it, and not just in writing. Prove
That's
it through fucking actions. And
there's nothing worse than having Jake do something for you when he goes, okay. Because he's not fully on board with what
I'll do it though.
Just told him.
Let's do it. Come on. I'll follow.
He will, but he'll be judging you the whole way. So
yeah.
On behalf of all of us here, I'd like to thank you for listening today. Please like, share, subscribe, and let us know how we did in the comments. I'm just going to do it by myself. We're not going to do a group thing. And make sure next week that you are not late for changeover.
Oh, thank goodness.
Yeah, so you're relieved of that. So you can tell your friend that change is gone. We've tried it. I've tried it for too long now. We can't get it together.
Yeah.
Oh, man, thanks for the week. And I'll see you next week.
All right, we'll catch you later, guys.